Cassandra, and welcome to Queer Magic. It's great to have you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. So I know you as author of Queering the Tarot, Queering Your Craft, and I know you from Twitter, I think. So very excited to have you on my channel. So tell us a bit about how long you've been involved in paganism and parts adjacent.
Yeah. So I am mid-30s now, firmly, and I started practicing when I was 18. So it's been a while. I went to school in North Carolina, and it was a small Baptist college, and I had honestly some really horrendous things happen to me. And unfortunately, the Christian organizations on campus did not respond the way that one would hope they would. And that's not, it's not like there was one thing that kind of made me seek out new or different answers. I think some of it was also just the age I was and curiosity about what was out there beyond how I'd been raised. And then on top of that, like finding out I did not have the support that I thought I had, I just started looking at alternatives. I turned to tarot first, but I had spent a really long time trying to suppress my own intuition. And the tarot kind of freaked me out. I was also still very in the closet at that point, and like there was just a lot going on. And there was the obvious trauma that I knew I was recovering from, but it was like wanting me to deal with stuff from way back in my childhood. And I was like, no, I hate this thing. So I kind of put it down for a while. And I still wanted more. So I started just kind of playing around with whatever witchcraft books I could get. There was a small metaphysical store in a nearby city. And there's a coven that did a lot there, did a lot of public ritual. I'm pretty sure they're a Wiccan coven, but if they remember me and I'm wrong, I don't want them to be like, hey. But I'm pretty sure that's what it was. So I really learned a lot there, and they had like free classes and stuff, which for a broke college student was like amazing. So I started just kind of playing around with stuff. College was extremely stressful. I would say I didn't truly grow into my path until I was out on my own, out in the world. And then it was just like me and my friends I lived with and the goddess just trying to make it. By then I had definitely picked up tarot again and was even doing it on the side for money. And then it became my full-time job, and then writing about it and teaching it became a big part of that job. I would say for witchcraft, paganism, since coming to the Twin Cities, I've pretty much stayed involved. I went to whatever classes I could afford. I went to like any public rituals that fit into my schedule. It wasn't until I started working in Minneapolis here in Minnesota at the Eye of Horus, doing readings there a couple times a week, which was such a saving grace financially, as well as just for my soul. Everyone there is really wonderful. But that's when I started really actually making like a community for the first time, or sort of finding a community for the first time.
Awesome. Yeah, I gather the Twin Cities are a great place to be a pagan. So that's pretty cool.
I love it here. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds amazing. They call it Paganistan, right? So,
yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, so tell us a bit about where you sit on the queer landscape.
Yeah. I am a non-binary lesbian, or what has felt more comfortable, even though this is like cutesier, which is normally not my thing. But I've been referring to myself as a they them lesbian a lot lately, and that feels a lot better to me.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. And so that's sort of where I fit there. And then I have a very close relationship that is not a romantic relationship. We call ourselves queer platonic partners. We've lived together for really our entire adult lives. I don't have the math in my brain right now, but since college.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. And so we're very committed to sort of like chosen family ideals, things like that. When we have partners, they like fold in, they don't, it. So that's sort of where we sit. Almost like a relationship anarchy aspect, but I tend to not love people who refer to themselves that way sometimes.
I like the idea of alternative arrangements, but I think that must take a lot of the stress out of living together in a lot of ways.
Yes, and yeah, well, and I'm a really independent person, and I'm a really I just really like my personal space, so having like my own room and stuff is amazing.
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, awesome. Fantastic. So with your tradition that you practice, how accommodating or inclusive or affirming is that of queer identity?
Yeah, it kind of runs the gamut. In Minneapolis, there's a really cool thing happening that is also happening a lot on the internet, which is like queer witches of various traditions are finding each other and forming almost like unofficial, eclectic covens without sort of like, the officialness of it. And so, and I think that is honestly where I am most happy, or where I am happiest and most content, is with those friends who are queer, who are witches or occultists or magical practitioners, and we talk about stuff and we do stuff together. My personal path, it used to be pretty Wiccan. Over time, it's become much more eclectic, but also much more Celtica centered, just honoring my own ancestry. And then it's also become, I don't know that it's become more folk magic-y, but I think I'm realizing how folk magic-y it is. And a lot of that is I very much have like DIY attitudes, because I was impoverished for most of my life until arguably the last couple of years. And so realizing that like, oh, that's not actually an official thing, that's like what folk practitioners do, has been like eye-opening. But yeah, I say all of that to say those really run the gamut. I have had really great experiences reaching out to people in Celtic community. And I have had really troubling experiences in that community specifically. There's a lot of focus on genitals as sort of seat of power. And both as a non-binary person, as well as an ally to trans people, as well as, I have some physical issues that make that like really, really not the seat of my power. I tend to think of my heart as the seat of my power.
Yeah.
And so I've had really, like I said, troubling binary experiences. A lot of what pushed me away from Wicca specifically was that I just didn't agree with some of the viewpoints of gods and goddesses. I felt like even that was a little bit binary. Just for me, like I'm not saying, I'm definitely not making statements for other people.
Yeah, I mean, it varies tremendously, but obviously if you encounter a lot of heteronormative nonsense, then you're going to look at it and go, yeah, heteronormative nonsense. So
basically, and that's what happened.
Yeah, like my work for the last 2 decades has been trying to do away with heteronormative nonsense. So.
And I love that. And that's a lot of why I wanted to come on. And I think that's so great. And it seems like such a hard job sometimes. At my small Lutheran college, which was the second college I went to, I started the GSA. When I got to the Twin Cities, no one was doing queer theater the way I wanted to be doing it. When it came to and then I started the Queering the Tarot column, which opened up a lot of those conversations. And at this point, I'm honestly just very tired of starting conversations. And it's not that I won't.
Yeah. But I much prefer preaching to the converted, I have to say. It's like, okay, yeah. There are some people who are just never going to get this stuff. So I'm going to start a thing over here. And if people want to come and play, then come and play. And if you don't, then just ignore me and carry on doing whatever it is you do.
Exactly.
I mean, I just wanted to create an alternative within the so-called mainstream, and actually it's working really well. Like a lot of people
so good.
A lot of people have gone, yes, I was already doing that, or that makes so much sense, and you know, well, so and there were lots of people already doing stuff, so
yeah. Oh yeah. And I think that's one thing that's so great about the internet is being able to find each other so much easier.
Yeah.
Being able to find each other, and like I said, if you live in a city with a high enough pagan population, it's also easier to find like-minded people in real life. I've been very blessed in Minneapolis. A lot of, you know, I always say that my path is very eclectic and is very DIY in a lot of ways. But a lot of that is because, you know, one of my best friends that I practice with is a Norse pagan, and I have no connection to that except that we do a lot of work together. I have several friends who are primarily occultists. They call themselves magicians, not witches. And, you know, when you're in, and it is such a location privilege, but like when you're in a situation like that, it just makes it so much easier for your work to become really eclectic and to find those spaces that you're looking for.
Awesome. Yeah, it's really, really good. So I guess you practice on your own as well, right?
Oh yeah. I was like exclusively, except for going to classes and public rituals, I was exclusively solitary for a really long time.
Interesting.
Yeah. When I said I was independent, that is like to a fault. Like, like I'll take classes, but then I just want to do it myself.
Fair enough. Yeah, I absolutely love working in groups, but I do tend to like be the one running the group. Yes.
See, and I'm actually, when I do work with a group, and even when like my friends and I get together to do a working, I actually don't, I like to have my little part written and that's it. I don't actually like to lead it.
Right. That is, yeah. I mean, I'm dying for other people to write rituals that I can take part in. But like, you know, if you want, in my experience up till very recently has been, if you want your Wicca inclusive and queer, then you better build your own. So that's what I was doing. So yeah.
That's so true though. Yeah.
So yeah, very excited to see your new book.
Thank you.
Yeah, tell us about queering the tarot and queering your craft.
Yeah, so queering the tarot is the more straightforward one to explain. It's basically a tarot book for people who are learning tarot, but it goes through each of the cards with a LGBTQ plus slant, as well as breaks down some of like the hierarchy in the court cards. There's a lot of binary in tarot as well. And depending on what I'm going through, I kind of go back and forth on like, is that the message? Do you learn to work with that? Is it letting you know? Or like sometimes I'm like, okay, but we can be more creative about this. This can mean something else. And so I try to present both options. Yeah, like I said, it's pretty straightforward. It's just a tarot book from a queer perspective.
Awesome.
I wrote for Little Red Tarot for a long time, and it was a column there. And then I had I was blessed enough to be able to like flesh it out and have Wiser publish it.
That's great. They've been publishing some cool stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, they're great. And then Queering Your Craft, Witchcraft from the Margins. It's a lot of the stuff that I was talking about earlier when I talked about sort of just like being independent, making it work, but needing to find a witchcraft or a magical practice that is, I would say, inclusive, but I also, and I know witches differ on this, and I actually love that, but I think like making it so specific and personal to yourself, even if you're working in groups, there's just something even more magical and special and connective to that for me. And so I try to walk people through like, okay, these are the basics of witchcraft. These are how you queer the basics of witchcraft. Now, what I think you should do is queer it and then make it very specific, personal to you.
Yeah.
And then there's a grimoire in the back I'm really proud of that has a lot of spells you don't see elsewhere. It has spells for polyamorous and kinky relationships. It has spells for sort of like protecting and blessing community and activists in the community. bringing chosen family into your life if you're struggling with your family of origin, but I will also say even struggling with like a chosen family that ended up not working out for you. Bringing other people in. So yeah, and then I even threw in some spells for like when you thought you could trust a witch and then they turned around and did something bad, because I think that's happened to a lot of people more than we like to admit. So it mostly is from a queer lens. It's also very from a like, well, what have I not seen in a spell book lens that I would like to?
Awesome. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, I have a spell for that situation actually, and I didn't put it in any of my books. So there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably should. Yeah, good point. I think as well, like the polyamory angle is really important, because I'm not polyamorous, but I have lots of friends who are, so I always try to include that a bit, as at least as much as, like, hello, this is a valid thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the Minneapolis queer community is really built on the backs of polyamorous people, or like activists and organizers who also largely happen to be polyamorous. And it's similar to, like, I think a lot of times both the bi and trans communities get really crapped on when like they've done so much of the organizing and activism, like going all the way back through queer history. So anyone that I know is like really doing the work and not getting recognized is like who I try to put at the forefront of my work.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, it really bugs me that I'm bisexual, and it really bugs me that we get like people just assume, okay, you're in a monogamous relationship with a man, so you're straight now. It's like, no, I'm still bisexual.
I think I'm lucky as a lesbian in that I went to 2 very small schools, which meant if I didn't date bisexual girls, I didn't date. There really weren't other lesbians on campus. And if there were, I dated them and we broke up fast, or we just weren't interested in each other.
That's cool.
And so having that early dating experience be so many people who are bi or pan, or people who have since come out also as non-binary, makes you want to really be inclusive. But I also think people should just want to be inclusive.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, but my little bisexual heart is so thank you. It's really lovely to hear.
Really, I'm glad.
Yeah. Yeah, because we get flack from both sides, and it's really nice to meet somebody who doesn't dish out that flack. So
absolutely. Well, and I get it. I also, I grew up very poor. I grew up very poor in a town that did not have a middle class, really. You were either wealthy or poor. Like, it was really very little in between. On top of that, it was the Bible Belt, which in the US is just a very conservative Christian area to live in. And I don't know, I've just always felt on the outskirts. When I came out of the closet originally, I had a lot of really horrible, terrifying experiences.
Wow.
And whenever I hear of anyone being any sort of bigot, I'm just like, why do you want to hurt people? Like, I just actively don't understand it.
Yeah, same. I'm like, when I was, my best friend at school was gay, and it, like, people were really mean to him, and this was in the 80s, so when it was acceptable, it was sort of generally socially acceptable to be massively homophobic. So that was a very formative experience. Yeah. So, but yeah, I can't imagine growing up in the Bible Belt. That's just terrifying. Absolutely.
My mom has always been relatively accepting, and so knowing that I at least had that was like definitely. And then I just lucked into a great group of friends, and I will say, I don't know if you found this to be true, but I don't know, the way that queer people have a tendency to find each other is so amazing to me, because we were all just like scared junior high students when we started being friends, and like 3 of them have come out as LGBTQ plus in some way, and like not counting me. And I just think it's amazing that this is the group that I like lucked into or was drawn to or whatever.
Yeah.
Never batted an eye at anything I've done. Oh yeah, I'm gay, I'm a witch, I'm moving to Minnesota. Like they're just like, yeah, we love you, great.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, I was very lucky that I had a group of queer people to hang out with and learn from. So yeah, I get you. That's very true. So yeah, what would you say was your favorite book on queer paganism / magic, witchcraft, etc.?
Yeah.
Tricky question, I know.
It is, because there's not that much. And the longer I'm doing the work I'm doing, obviously the more and more resources I find. But none of the foundational texts I learned from had a queer slant at all. And that was actually really difficult for me. And it's part of why I formed such a DIY relationship to it.
Right.
I will say in the past few years, there are some books that I really love. There's Outside the Charmed Circle by Misha Magdalene, which is really wonderful. Yeah. And I think there's a few, and then there's just authors like you and I who are just more comfortable being out and saying it. You know, I think Matt Oren's Psychic Witch, I blanked. I was like, I know the book. Is really wonderful. Yeah, I think really what I have done in the way I learned until I found all of those authors was I read books about goddesses, I read books about how to do candle magic, etc. And then I just kind of had to piece stuff together. Because I did really have some difficulty, and that absolutely does not mean those books are not out there, but I was also in like a weird location and everything.
Yeah, that doesn't help. I actually have a list that I compile. I started compiling a list in 2015, and it's getting longer.
Yay!
And I've got a new version of it coming out on the 1st of January, and you're on it.
Yay, thank you.
So it's getting bigger, it's getting longer, and I made a video to go with it as well. So
cool.
But I'm pleased that there's more stuff coming out, you know, it's great.
I will also say a lot of what I have done in modern day, so like over the past, I would say 6 or 7 years, there's a lot of like online creators that I think are really fantastic, and like I've been blessed enough to become friends with a lot of them. So I always feel weird being like, you should absolutely check out Northern Lights Witch, because also I've texted them 6 times today. Like, but their work is also really they're the sort of Norse heathen Scandinavian practitioner, but they teach a class called Radical Runes. Like everything is very much through a similar viewpoint to what we're talking about.
Cool. Definitely check them out.
Yeah. And then Azali Earthwork primarily does tarot posting, but she does a lot of really wonderful, she has a series called, I'm like blanking a lot today. I think it's called Ritual and Honey. She does a lot of tea-based work, so herb-based work, but her work is really fantastic. And even when she does deck reviews, she's like, here is where this deck excels at being modern and inclusive, and here is where this deck really does not excel at that.
Oh, that's useful. Yeah.
So I would say those people who, like I said, I have become friends with, so I feel weird, but the work they're doing is genuinely outstanding.
Great. Yeah, that's really good. And I hope that some of them will write books too, because that'll be good.
I'm in an occult writers group with them and a few other people, and every time I want to be like, who has a book they want me to help them submit to Wiser.
Great. That's a good thing to do. Yep. Yeah, I mean, my motto at the moment is, you know, let's lift each other up and we all rise together, and then, you know, like share each other's work and stuff. It's because
stronger together.
Yeah. I stopped being on Pathos, and that, which was a good move for me. And that's, you know, that was a good hub for exposure, but like just couldn't cope with their new contract. So we need an alternative place to sort of focus all this stuff together.
We do. I think about that a lot. And like the Little Red Tarot Hub was so great when it was thriving. And unfortunately, you know, it just, the woman who runs it did not mean for it to turn into what it turned into. It sort of like really outgrew her capacity to run it.
Yeah, that's always a problem.
And so it ended up getting archived, which I totally understand. However, everyone's articles are still up.
Yeah, like look at what happened. Like Witchfox has now closed its doors, although thankfully it's all preserved online.
It is. It's hard. I'd love to see like a collective of us like running something like that together. It's just so like it's way too much work for a couple of people, but then working in a collective is also its own problem, especially if there's not money. So like I always feel like there's not a great solution. I just still would really love that.
Yeah, I think it would be great. One day it will happen, like when I retire. Because I work in software development, so you know.
Oh yeah, that's your hands are a little full.
Yeah, pretty much. But like, you know, when I retire, which is hopefully not that long away now.
Hopefully, if that's what you're wanting, yeah.
That would be good. Yes. Right. So yeah, you presumably have a website that you would like to share.
Yes, Cassandra-Snow.com. And up on the website now, for health reasons, I had to pretty much take my tarot store down. I don't really know when I'll be able. I'm making it sound way worse than it is. I have to have my gallbladder out and like nothing is set. So, which just means I don't know when I'm gonna be able to do anything. Right. Except I have a few classes scheduled that I'm gonna plan my surgery around instead of the other way around. And I just don't want to take on more work than that. But people can register for a class called Tarot for Today, where we look at the tarot through a modern practical lens. While I always tell people, like, you're never going to come to a tarot class of mine that is like free of woo. But this one is meant to really make it something manageable and usable for like day-to-day life and modern problems, even with like technology and stuff.
Oh, sounds really good. Yeah.
Thank you. But people can sign up for that, Cassandra-Snow.com.
Excellent. I will add that on the last slide as well. So
yeah.
Great. So anything else you want to add?
Not really. Probably just shout out my Instagram, because that's where I do a lot of like free tarot and witchcraft content. And then when I have new classes coming up, I'm doing sort of a new type of partnership with the Eye of Horus. I'm not reading in person right now because of the pandemic. But there'll be some online classes and stuff. All of that is going to be at Tarot Cassandra on Instagram. So
great. Awesome. Yeah, I'll add a link to that as well. Fantastic. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for joining us on Queer Magic, and it's been lovely.
Yeah.
And looking forward to reading your book. It'll be great.
Awesome. I'm looking forward. I picked up some of yours, but then my health went awry.
Fair enough.
So,
yeah. Well, I hope that all goes well and that you make a full recovery. So,
thank you. I'm sure it will. It's just getting it done.
Yeah. Hope you have the insurance sorted. Yeah.
I'm very lucky in that capacity to live in Minnesota.
Ah, good. Yes. Yeah, it does vary by state, doesn't it? And it's like
dramatically.
Yeah. Because we tend to just look at the US and go, oh, they don't have health insurance, but yeah.
Well, and like I have friends who are also solopreneurs who are losing their insurance because they made too much.
Ouch. Yeah.
It's not a great system.
No. Well, glad that you're covered and that you can get the surgery you need. That is good to know. So yeah, very best wishes with that, and thanks again for a great interview.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Yeah, awesome.